Hi, my name is Pearse Coyle, and today I'm going to explain the Deep Tech Seed Fund Scorecard and how we use it during the ICURe Exploit program. So first of all, to introduce myself, I have been involved in a bunch of companies. Most recently, before I created Deep Tech Seed Fund, I did a successful spin out from two small Irish universities, which we eventually sold to a US semiconductor company. And the remarkable thing about that, and which greatly informed what we did in creating the fund and in creating the scorecard, was that even though we had fantastic commercial traction, we found it hard to raise early stage money because so few investors actually get involved at the really early stage. So I recognize a need for ventures to do justice to whatever level of market traction they have and present themselves in a better way to investors. And then when we created the fund, we went looking for ventures just like that had great traction. And we are looking to invest across Europe, but we found the ICURe program actually has the best process for market discovery, the best process for taking a team that is still within university, thinking about creating a spin out and helping them to come to a really informed decision as to whether the market wants what they've got. And from an investor point of view, it actually does the best job in allowing those teams to present what the level of market interest is. So we got kind of excited and we spent a lot of time looking at ventures that had come through ICURe. We attended a lot of options roundabouts, but we found that there was a piece missing at the end. There was it wasn't quite possible to invest, or they weren't quite finishing the job. And so we came back to Innovate UK and said, look, you've got a really good program, but there's a couple of little small things you do. And if you do these small things, it will make a huge difference, both to the viability of the companies, but also to the ability of those companies to present themselves to investors. And so that's what led to the Deep Tech Seed Fund Scorecard, which I'm going to talk you through very shortly. The status of the scorecard right now is we have run 3 ICURe cohorts through it over the last couple of years, and from that process we've adapted it based on the lessons learned, based on the feedback from universities, based on the feedback of the teams, and also looking at the success of those teams in applying for the follow-on funding, as it was called, which is now called Exploit funding. So to get straight into it, the main element of the Deep Tech Seed Fund Scorecard, which you see here, is all about evidence of traction. And the idea is to take ventures that have gone through ICURe, and instead of them presenting just a point-in-time view of the level of interest that they encountered during the ICURe Discovery and ICURe Explorer programs, instead of them treating that as those people said to us some time ago they were interested, it's to help them to provide a means to have an ongoing and more committed engagement with those companies. So the first thing in the scorecard is what you see here, and this is pretty much what you get currently from ICURe Explorer and ICURe Discovery. You get simple information about how many ventures were spoken to, what the level of engagement was, how many seem to be still interested. So you'll all be familiar with this kind of presentation, and also that good understanding of how international that sample is. The big change then with scorecard is that we go on to take things to another level, which is to encourage those ventures or those potential spin-outs to go back out to the interested customers and say, okay, remember you said you were really excited about what we've done. How about we do something together? How about you pay for a trial? How about you provide us some facilities that allow us to use your equipment to do this next thing that we need to do? Or how about you even invest in our company? So it's about making the interest into something tangible. And tangible at a number of different levels. Like there's a number of different levels of engagement, a number of different levels of interest that the interested customers can demonstrate, and I'll talk you through that in a moment. So the upshot of that kind of an exercise is that the ventures will be able to come back and say, hey, look, this is what we found when we went out. Some of these companies are actually willing to do something with us now. So imagine you have a new material. You've some amazing new material with really exciting properties, and you've been able to, in the lab today, create that at gram scale. But and everybody's told you that actually what they really need to see before they can get really excited is they want to see you produce it at kilogram scale. And then later on, some people say, well, come back to us when you're ready to produce it in commercial quantities. So you've got a couple of distinct phases that you can identify. There's the now, like what stage are you at now? What stage do you expect to be at with your next level of grant funding or next level of funding that you're going to get, which is perhaps kilogram scale, and then there's a phase after that, which may be first commercial availability. So it will be possible for you to present the set of interested customers along that sort of timeline. Say, well, look, some of them are actually really excited. They want to do something with us now. Then this other set are sort of waiting slightly later, and there's another set slightly later still. But it's actually putting them into a timeline, and ideally getting a bunch of them into a position where they're willing to confirm that to an investor or to a grant funder who picks up the phone to them and say, yes, I've spoken to those guys, I really think this is world-leading stuff, but we just don't have a process for engaging with them now. But yes, if they can get it to that stage, then we can really engage. So actually bringing people, making that engagement much more tangible. And then the other level, and this is on the sort of horizontal or the row level access here, it's to differentiate what is that level of engagement. So most people, you can easily say to people, hey, how about we do a proof of concept, for free? Hey, often a lot of companies will say, sure, why not? Now that's a pretty light level of commitment. It's typically the sort of lightest thing you could do. There's another level then where people might say, okay, well, I'll provide you facilities. You can use our equipment, you can use our labs, or maybe, we'll provide data for you. There's some other level. And then there's a level again where people are willing to pay for a proof of concept, which is often much easier to get than early stage researchers realize. And then there's a level beyond that, which may be investment, it might be pre-purchase of a product. But so essentially you're saying there's this scale of how soon will people engage and at what level will they engage. So at a glance, it takes a bit of work to populate this, but when you've done so, then at a glance, an investor or a grant funder can see, wow, this is amazing. Look at the level of engagement. Look how near term that engagement is. And that is night and day in terms of the way a venture looks. So as an investor, and I've seen a lot of stuff, I see a lot of science projects, they come to me, and the standard presentation is, hey, we're solving a big problem, we've got some amazing science, and please give us $1 million. It's kind of something like that. Very rarely do they do a good job in traction, and very often they will claim that they can't possibly get any level of traction because we haven't got a product yet, or we haven't proven it, or we haven't gone through all the regulatory stages yet. But in fact, it is absolutely possible to evidence commitment by asking in the right way. So what we've done is we've left it open to the ventures to define what constitutes now, what is next, what is the stage after that? And equally, we've left it to the ventures themselves to populate, like, what is that sort of low level of commitment they could ask for? What's the next level? What's the next level? And it varies a lot depending on the sector you're in. And it may be, and so we provide a bunch of notes in support of that for each of these. And there's also a kind of a guide document that the early adopter proposal document, which we reference there, which again gives people guidance on how to ask, because most of the teams don't realize how easy it is. They've worked for years, they've possibly spent millions of government money coming up with something amazing, and they don't realize that if they're on the right track, if what they are seeking to commercialize in the company really is interesting, then there will be people who actually want access to it really early, and we will be willing to pay for that. They don't appreciate that an awful lot of big companies have little slush funds here and there. They can easily give 20, 30 grand towards a proof of concept. They easily have some program that they can bring those ventures into, which will evidence commitment. And if they don't have it now, they almost always have something for slightly later. So getting that picture of interest into this kind of like what level of commitment and when is really the sort of by far the main part of the scorecard. And doing that, and being seen to be successful in doing that, has a huge effect, both materially on the venture by forcing them to actually go back to the people who are interested and seek some tangible commitment, but it also in terms of the optics of how the venture is presented makes a huge difference. So that's really the main part of the scorecard. The other part so still within the kind of traction sheet, we ask ventures to go out and sort of show examples of companies that were somewhat comparable, same space, same kind of business model that achieved scale. And this is very useful as well. There are some sectors where it's really, really hard ever to turn something into a big company. It's lots of lifestyle companies, or you can have a viable company, but it's hard to get very big. But if you can show that there are precursors to what you've done, who are now at some level of scale as measured by, how much they're worth in the stock market, or how much venture capital they've raised, or how much revenue they're turning over. That really helps as well to kind of make your venture seem more viable and more fundable. So the next part then is around cap table, and this is a really big, challenging area for an awful lot of university spin-out ventures. There is an endless debate about what stake the university should take, and we're not getting into that at all. I mean, we have a sort of we leave a space here for that to be declared. But the primary focus that we have around cap table is informed by Innovate UK's experience, actually, which is that failure to agree a cap table has been the single biggest reason why ventures fail to progress from their grant stage on to private venture capital subsequently. So our primary focus here is this little tick box we have at the bottom, where you are asked to declare, have you agreed a cap table, or have you formally agreed a cap table, or have you not agreed it at all? And basically, if you've not agreed it at all, you're simply not at the races at all. And then in terms of populating this, we highlight both the equity percentage that the founders are looking to claim, but also the percentage of their time that they're willing to commit to the venture. And this is really useful because there is very often a difficult and very contentious discussion goes on between the principal investigator, who might have been working on something for years, who feels that it's very much their technology, and perhaps they ought to own the vast majority of the founder's stock, even though they're not willing to make a significant time commitment going forward, like over the next 4 years, which is typically what investors want. So putting those down, the time commitment and the percentage in the same place, is just helpful for that discussion. And what we're looking to do is simply drive that process, or kind of essentially force ventures to have a serious discussion with their university and with their co-founders as to who owns what. And it's actually not something, this came more from Innovate UK than from ourselves. We didn't appreciate how significant this was, but it is huge. And then finally, a related topic then is just the IP agreement. You can't assume that you're going to have some fabulously benign IP agreement with the university. You need to actually go out and say, okay, hey, what are you guys offering? And we have a simple format here for you to just summarize that. Is it a license? Is it an exclusive license? Is it an assignment, or whatever? Or is there no formal IP at all? So we just provide a place for people to put that in. And then the last part is just around funding requirement, and this is not such an issue for the around the ICURe process. This is really later on when you're talking to investors, so it's not part of the process of applying for Innovate UK funding. But what we're driving at here is two things. There's two parts to this. One is we are pushing the ventures to be clear about what it is they're going to use funds for, and so if you go back to the simple example at the beginning. So if they're saying we are going to use the grant funding or the investor funding to get from gram scale to kilogram scale, fine, that's a clear statement. You can say that in a few words. And then the related little sneaky question we have in under there is, of the companies that are in some way committed to you or are seriously interested, how many of those believe that that is what you should do? And it sounds like a meaningless question, but surprisingly, very often the scientific founding team coming into something will have their own ideas as to what they want to do next. They will, without having spoken to anybody, they'll think, well, actually the logical thing to do next is X. But their early adopter customers might have a slightly different idea. And, there has been a bad history of people will talk to companies, they will be interested, then they'll get the grant money, the exploit follow-on funding as it's called now, and they will just go and spend that on what they think they need to spend it, without regard to the things that the potential early adopters were particularly interested in. So we are saying, okay, how many of those early adopters actually agree that what it is you're proposing to do is the thing that is going to allow them to say, that's great, you've done that, now I'm ready to make the bigger commitment. And it's actually a surprisingly significant little question. And then going beyond that, and this is the part that's relevant for the later sort of investor conversation. When you are going out seeking investor funds, very often ventures present this in a sort of a strange way. They don't do justice to their situation exactly. So they might say, "Here, we're trying to raise $1 million," and you look at the venture and you say, "How can any investor justify giving this venture $1 million?" they've really very little traction. They're really at an early TRL level. And you have to do a bunch of digging before they explain, oh, no. We've got 300K from Innovate UK or whoever. We've got another 250K from some research collaboration. And, 2 companies are paying us 50 grand each for a proof of concept. And you realize that, and by the way, the university will automatically match whatever investors put in. So they're actually really only looking for private investors to give them 150K. But it often isn't presented that way. And then conversely, sometimes people might come out and say, hey, we need 150K. And you're looking at it and it's the same kind of concerns about the viability of the company. And they don't point out to you that actually we have 850K of other money that's going to come in alongside this, which de-risks the thing massively. So it's just very helpful for companies or for ventures to realize that they need to kind of fully paint the financial picture ahead of seeking private funds. That's the scorecard. And the big thing that we're trying to achieve with the scorecard is to greatly improve the viability of the companies and to take ventures that have come through ICURe away from a position where they're saying, hey, we spoke to a bunch of companies some time ago, they say they're interested, to a situation where they're saying, hey, we've spoken to a bunch of companies, a bunch of them are engaged in the following way, and they're kind of going to be working with us, they're going to be engaged with us over this next phase, hopefully with a view to sort of doing business with us later on. It's a completely different situation, and we have found that by working with the ventures to help them populate the scorecard, their behavior changes, what they do changes a lot. And the effect has been on each cohort, and we've done it with 3 cohorts now, what we find is that the best ventures already had some level of conversation like this, but they perhaps weren't sure exactly what to ask for. Their most interested customers or potential customers will have said to them, okay, that's great, we'd really like to work with you. We actually have a fund that we can use for this kind of a pilot project or whatever, and they perhaps didn't ask for it. And then the worst ones are kind of horrified at the idea of having to ask for any level of commitment, and they generally sort of fall out of the process. And the middle group typically does quite a lot of work and leaves themselves in a much better position. So this has a very big material effect on the quality of ventures coming through ICURe. And as I said, it has a very big effect on the way in which they're viewed, because there is objective evidence as to the level of market traction. And it's not a sort of subjective thing, like there's various kind of commercial readiness metrics or tools have been proposed where you see I'm at commercial level 3 or level 4. This is not a subjective grading. This is a case of, going back to my first slide, it's about saying, okay, look, or my second slide, I think, look, this is the picture in terms of commitment and numerically. And so that's the scorecard. So this year, we're starting a wider investor group that is going to provide feedback around the scorecard and how it's working, so that we can ensure that as we progress, that what goes into the scorecard actually is representative of the views of a bunch of early stage science-based investors. So that's it. So on the next slide, you'll see some contact details. So absolutely get back to us if you have any questions on this. Otherwise, good luck with your work in the ICURe program and with using the scorecard. Thank you.